Kyle Larson receives Indianapolis redemption by winning the Brickyard 400, but did NASCAR show favoritism in some of the late race calls to help him get this win? Let's analyze everything that just took place in the 2024 Brickyard 400. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about this year's Brickyard 400, the return of the Brickyard 400, first time since 2020, the return to the Indianapolis Oval, and it was a big race. We have a lot of controversy at the end, some officiating calls that have been very questionable by fans and other drivers alike. We'll break down all that. We're going to take a deep look at that. We'll look at the playoffs. Bubba Wallace trying to catch Ross Chastain. We'll break that down as well. We'll take a look at the regular season points as well that pays big dividends going into the playoffs. Let's break down this Indianapolis race, this Brickyard 400, which I thought was a solid race going into it. I got a little confused midway through the race because, usually I'm good at keeping up with the strategy, but I did lose a little bit of track of the strategy midway through this race. But once we got into the final stage, had a few cautions, I was able to kind of catch back up, learn what was going on, and it was fun to watch. Keselowski trying to stay out, trying to make an impossible fuel run with Kyle Larson running them down on fresher tires and full of fuel, obviously running a little bit harder while everybody else was saving fuel at the end of this race. But let's break down the controversial calls by NASCAR, during this race. And there's three moments I point to and why people are a little upset and why NASCAR might have been showing a little bit of favoritism towards Kyle Larson, at least looking at it from fan perspective. I think there's a few other teams and drivers that might look into this as well. But let's take a look at the first call, right? And this is going above the white line to merge onto the racetrack. Now, Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski received penalties for this, pass-through penalties early in the race. This really affected their race. This hurt Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott was a really fast race car, potentially ending his chance to get a Brickyard 400 win. That's a pretty big deal, right? Same thing for Brad Keselowski. Obviously, Brad Keselowski, that put him on a different fuel strategy than everybody else with that penalty. But, there were a few other drivers that did something similar that did not receive penalties. Kyle Larson kind of did something maybe not as egregious, but, similar in that same photo. So I think fans are looking at that. They're a little upset. Some were saying Larson should have received the penalty. It's too black and it's not black and white, right? It's too much of a gray area in this rule. And here's what we received from a NASCAR spokesperson. It says, here you may swing beyond the white line on the acceleration lane between turns 1 and 2, but stay off the racing surface. Well, what's not black and white to me is what is the racing surface, and not only that, there's two white lines. So just a confusing rule. I think this needs to be more black and white, and we've had a few confusing rules in the past at this racetrack, particularly on the road course a few years ago with the the exit ramp, and that's another point of conversation. This needs to be I think put together before the race, and it needs to be black and white. The good thing is now we know going into next year, make it black and white. Can you go above what yellow line at any portion leaving pit road or not? I think that needs to be clear-cut rule so there's no more penalties, no confusion moving forward. But that's not the big one. The big ones are coming to the final restart, right? So we have Kyle Busch, obviously, his terrible season continues with the wreck with 3 laps to go. That throws a caution, throwing a wrinkle in everything, right? I mentioned Brad Keselowski trying to stay out on an impossible fuel run. Well, it was impossible because he couldn't go 2 more laps. He pulls off the racetrack right before you get to the restart zone. Now, per rule, what we understand, looking at the situation, we did get an explanation from NASCAR after the race. Bob Pockrass did post a tweet, a little bit of a NASCAR explanation. Kyle Larson gets to move up because Brad Keselowski ran out of fuel. So Larson, in that whole entire inside lane, gets to move up 1, right? That lets them move up. But that does not make Kyle Larson, and this was, I couldn't quite understand from the commentators. I think they were a little confused as well. They weren't getting quite a clear-cut explanation. Ryan Blaney, who's the leader at the time, is still the control car. So the rule is you cannot pass the control car in the restart zone, which is the 2 thin white lines. Now you can pass them coming to the start-finish line. That's only during the initial start of the race. So it gets a little complicated there. I don't want to get into that. But anyway, Kyle Larson cannot pass Ryan Blaney, the 12 car, in this box, in this restart zone. And it's close. It's really close. I saw a lot of, talk of he did jump it. I think Ryan Blaney, might have thought he jumped it as well, but it's just close. That is a judgment call for sure, but it's just really, really close. And they said NASCAR said after the race he did not jump the restart zone. So certainly that sort of clears up that penalty, right? NASCAR didn't give it to him. They apparently looked at it, saw where he didn't jump the restart. This was also a concern back at Richmond earlier this year with Denny Hamlin. We need to bring that up as well because Denny Hamlin very clearly jumped the restart earlier this year at Richmond, but did not get penalized. NASCAR said, moving forward, we will definitely penalize you for it. Well, it was close today in Indianapolis. Want to point that out. And then we go to the final 2-lap stint, right? The final 2 laps of the race. Obviously Kyle Larson takes the lead on that. Then we have another huge crash going into turn 1 that throws another caution. Kyle Larson gets the lead from Ryan Blaney. And then we have another restart. And we have Ryan Preece spins on the back straightaway with 2 laps to go. Now, once again, we all know the rule. If you get to the white flag, the next flag ends the race, whether that's the checkered or the caution. The caution can end the race after you cross the white flag. You don't get to the final lap. You cannot end the race. You have to go back. Unlimited restarts. We don't want to have another Nashville, right? But NASCAR actually gives Ryan Preece a lot of time. Obviously, sitting there, hit the inside wall, head on. Waits a long time until Kyle Larson takes the white flag, then throws the caution, solidifying a Kyle Larson win. I don't think that was really NASCAR showing Kyle Larson favoritism. I think that was more of you don't want another overtime attempt. You don't want another repeat of Nashville earlier this year because that just looks sloppy, with that many overtime attempts. But man, with all those calls combined, and once again, one of these calls being missed is different, but with all these calls combined, 3 major calls in big moments in this race, it just seems like NASCAR was showing favoritism to the 5 car. And this isn't like new. This isn't NASCAR just starting to show favoritism to the 5 car. This has been a conversation from fans for a while, which just makes the whole situation worse, right? I mean, fans have been saying for, a little over a year now that NASCAR shows favoritism to Hendrick Motorsports, to Kyle Larson, particularly to Jeff Gordon. So this just adds fuel to the fire, right? If this was another driver, it wouldn't have been as heavy, but it's been a point of conversation for a while. And I hate it for the reason that it does look like they showed favoritism, even if they didn't. And I don't think they did, but it just looks so much like they did. But the thing that really upsets me is this does take away what Kyle Larson did. And what Kyle Larson did was impressive. Restarted on that before we went into the overtimes. On the final restart in regulation, Kyle Larson restarted, I think it was 24th, was able to pass all those cars at a racetrack where we didn't see a whole lot of passing throughout the day. Track position was key. Kyle Larson was flying through the field. He wasn't saving fuel like everybody else. He was able to get by a charging Denny Hamlin, right? Denny Hamlin picked it up, one of the fastest cars all race long. He was able to get up there and pass him. And then obviously Ryan Blaney was able to Kyle Larson was able to get by Ryan Blaney as well on the restart. Big battle there, great battle there. And, Kyle Larson obviously did a lot of things, showed a lot of talent today. And we've seen, some not bright moments out of Kyle Larson this year, but today was certainly a race where we saw a lot of good moments from Kyle Larson, a lot of bright spots. I thought what he did today was full of talent. Just the passes he made, the strategy from Cliff Daniels, one of the, my favorite crew chief in NASCAR, I think, just by the way he handles things and can make things out of bad situations better. Cliff Daniels, a great team, is a great combination. So I do hate that this happened, and I feel like it does sort of take away from their win that we had these controversial calls, because I think what they did today was very impressive. I think there was a great shot they would have got this win without the assistance from these calls or these fortunate calls for Kyle Larson. So I just want to throw that out there. Very impressive run, and this does give Kyle Larson his 4th win of the year and the points lead as well. So certainly break that down as well. Let's kind of talk about the top 10. Let's go through the finishing results, right? Kyle Larson in the 5 car. You have Tyler Reddick in the 45, get a solid 2nd place finish. Ryan Blaney, unfortunately, got a little bit loose on that final restart there, so slid up the track a little bit. He was really wiggling there. I thought he almost lost it. He was really pushing it hard on that top lane, but just wasn't quite able to hold off Tyler Reddick or get by Kyle Larson on that restart. Finishes in the 3rd position. Solid run for Christopher Bell, right? Used the right strategy call, was saving fuel at the end of the race, was able to get a nice 4th place finish. You have Bubba Wallace able to finish in the 5th position. He's trying to catch Ross Chastain in the points battle, which Ross Chastain had a disastrous day, right? He was slow in qualifying, slow in practice, slow in the race. So certainly a big advantage for Wallace there. We'll talk about that a little more when we get in the playoff section of the video. Todd Gilliland's really turning some heads in that 38 Ford this year for Front Row. I think it's really impressive that he's able to take these race cars and get good results, right? Like I said, I've said this a couple of times this season. It's one thing to have a really fast race car and not get the results and not execute, but it's another thing to have a race car that I don't think is a top 10 race car. And I do not think Todd Gilliland is in top 10, top 15 equipment right now. I know that team's building, getting better, but I don't think right now that is top 15, maybe even top 20 equipment, and he's running in the 6th position. He led a lot of laps at Atlanta. It's not this his first top 10 this season. He's got some top 10s this year. That crew chief, that driver is getting results in a crown jewel race like this and other races this season. Very impressive by Todd Gilliland, and I think he's turning a lot of heads. He's definitely caught my attention. I'm sure he's caught other drivers or other teams' attention in NASCAR just by the amount of talent that he's showing. So certainly big deal there for Todd Gilliland to get a 6th place finish. Really exciting to see what he can do in that 38 Ford this year. Austin Cindric was able to get a solid 7th place finish. He's sort of having, the opposite, right, of Todd Gilliland, having a really down year. His 3rd season. I know he got the win earlier this year, but overall just not in the top 16 in points. The only reason he's in the playoffs is because of that victory, which don't want to overshadow that, but certainly not been a, Penske standard season for Austin Cindric. So we'll see if, hopefully getting the top 10 helps him get some momentum, turn this around. Daniel Suarez, same type of situation Cindric's in, just has not been an ideal season, but was able to get a win early on that 3-wide finish. But not an ideal season at all for Daniel Suarez, but a nice top 10. We'll see if he can help turn things around. Noah Gragson, who seems to keep getting better each week, right? One of the best SHR4 drivers right now, I think. He's been getting the best results lately. You go back to the Chicago street race when all those, SHR cars were wrecking multiple times. Noah Gragson was the only one to finish in the top 30 with the 14th place finish. Never got caught up in issues that I saw. So certainly that was nice. And then Chase Elliott, poor Chase Elliott, right? A really fast race car, but caught up on the penalty, got caught on, was forced his hand with that penalty to get on a different strategy than everybody else. And that just wasn't quite the best one, but he was really fast. I think Chase Elliott had a good chance to win the Brickyard 400, but was unable to do so. Now I think about it, I don't think Chase Elliott's ever won a crown jewel race, one of the 4 crown jewels. I have to go back and make sure that I'm right on that. But, he was close to the Coke 600 in 2020, couldn't get it because of a late race caution, then couldn't get it today because of some unfortunate situations. So Chase Elliott's still looking for that first crown jewel win, I believe, as well. Let's take a quick look at the point standings. This is the regular season points, right? This gives Kyle Larson the regular season points lead. Chase Elliott goes down to second, 10 below. Tyler Reddick, 15 below. Denny Hamlin with a disastrous day today. You can take a look here. Just gets caught up in a late race wreck. Really unfortunate situation. Takes him out of contention for one, getting the win. Denny Hamlin was looking to get, sweep the crown jewels. He wants every crown jewel win. He's got the 3 Daytona 500s, multiple Southern 500s, a Coca-Cola 600. Now all he needs is a Brickyard 400. Didn't get it today because of unfortunate situation, but lost a lot of points as well. And then you see Ryan Blaney trying to catch up. Probably not going to get there, 73 below with 4 races remaining. The reason this is a big deal for the regular season championship is because they do pay big dividends going into every round of the playoffs. If it ended today, Kyle Larson would receive 15 bonus points on top of what he already has per round of the playoffs. So if he makes it all 3 rounds, that is 45 points that Kyle Larson would receive in the playoffs extra on top of what he already has for winning this regular season title. Second place would receive 10 points, so Chase Elliott would receive 10, Tyler Reddick would receive 8, Denny Hamlin 7, Ryan Blaney 6, all the way down to 10. So that's how that works. Just wanted to take a quick look at it there because I think it is fairly important to look at. Let's take a look at the playoff grid, right? Because that's a little bigger right now. 22 of the 26 regular season races complete. Kyle Larson takes the lead with 4 wins this season, most playoff points, leading the regular season standing. Everything looks great right now for Kyle Larson, right? And then, of course, we still have our 3 3-time winners, Ryan Blaney with 2. Then we have our multiple, one-time winners. But the thing, it's starting to get really tight on the cut line, right? I still think Martin Truex is safe. The only thing that knocks Martin Truex Jr. out at this point is if you get 4 new winners in 4 races. It could happen, but I don't see that happening. Martin Truex Jr. still, like I've been saying all season, safe in the playoffs. I've been saying for a long time that Ty Gibbs is safe in the playoffs, but not really. You get 2 surprise winners. You could, put him right there on the cut line. Certainly he's not really that safe in points. 2 engine failures in a row, right? Had an engine failure in Pocono, had an engine trouble today. I believe he finished the race, but had engine trouble, was not running on all cylinders. Big trouble for Ty Gibbs. Got to figure out what's going on over there in the 54 camp for having multiple engine failures. That's not good to have 2 weeks in a row at these high-speed racetracks. But he's still 42 above. Chris Buescher, 17 above. Ross Chastain now only 7 points above after this disastrous day from Ross Chastain. Great day for Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace was able to win the first stage, so he takes those 10 bonus points. Then he gets, a 5th place finish, takes all those points. Only 7 below now. Of course, you look at Chase Briscoe anything on back there, not going to be able to point their way in. Kyle Busch not going to be able to point his way in after wrecking today here with 3 laps to go in regulation. Todd Gilliland, sneaking up in the 20th position. Good season for Todd Gilliland, 20th in the points, but on the playoff grid, but just not enough to get into the playoffs without a victory. So the concern right now, I think, is for Ross Chastain and Chris Buescher, right? This isn't just a battle to be 16th. I think if you're Bubba Wallace, Chastain, Buescher, even Ty Gibbs, you want to be 15th. Because if I look at the races remaining in the regular season, you have Richmond, strategic racetrack, new tire compounds coming out. That could produce a surprise winner in and of itself. You still have Truex without a win. Kyle Busch, somebody like that could always get a win as well. You never know. And then you have Michigan, but then you have Daytona right there, the second race before the end of the regular season. That's the big concern for me. If I'm a crew chief, if I'm a team owner, I want to be 15th because I know that going into Daytona, anybody can win that race. I know Todd Gilliland can win that race. I know that Michael McDowell can win that race. He's done it before. I know other drivers below the cut line. Kyle Busch can get a win there, as he's done it at Talladega last year at a restrictor plate type racetrack. I know that anybody can win at Daytona that has talent. There's a lot of drivers below 20th in points that can get a win at Daytona. That would force 16th below the cut line. So I think I want to be 15th going into that Daytona race. So we want to keep an eye out on that as well. Only a 10-point difference from 15th to 16th as well. And only 17 points from 15th to 17th. So we'll have to continue to watch that as well for the remainder of these 4 races to go this NASCAR season. But that's it. That's all I really want to talk about. I didn't want this video to go quite that long, but we do have Richmond next. It's in 2 weeks. We do have a 2-week break for the Olympics. So certainly I'll be back for that Richmond race in 2 weeks. Tire compounds. I may or may not be in attendance for that Richmond race. Don't have plans yet. I'm going to try to go, but there's a few things coming up. Maybe I can get there, but certainly hopefully I get to go. I think it would be a lot of fun to see those new tire compounds in person. But that's it. It's really all there's to talk about following this NASCAR race at Indianapolis Brickyard 400 return. I thought it was great. But of course, like and subscribe if you like the video. Share the video if you do. I really do appreciate it. And of course, about Kyle Busch, bad season continuing, 25th place finish, I think. Let's get rowdy.